Hey, welcome back, everybody. Not Vanguard related. Don't worry, we're gonna get back to that. But I played at my first Yu-Gi-Oh regional in 8 years, uh, with a newer style deck that I've taken a liking to because I like pendulum cards. And I just wanted to, show off what I played, talk about it a little, and yeah, let's get on into it. Uh, Field Center is the adorable little yummy guy. I don't have the deck, but I do like the little strawberry cup guy. So these guys, they all sort of have similar effects. So I'm just gonna put them all out together. So it's three Atori Mar, three Leon, three. Let's see here. You can go right there, maybe. That's way too far. Three Pixia, and then if we just back this up a smidge right there, three Tail. So these are the Enneacrafts. These are the big boys of the deck. Basically, this is a deck that revolves around face down set monsters, which is really weird because they're pendulums, but it just gives them. I guess it was more just so they could have more text on them. Uh, the pendulum scale effect on these ones doesn't really matter because it doesn't come up, but you can if you would like scale. Um, you can like scale one of the big boys to get like counters, but I try to leave them off of that because I'd rather have them do something productive, which is their set down effects. So this one is a Omni negate on the field. If your opponent activates an effect, it flips them face up, and then you get to hard turn every monster they have face down, and they can't change battle positions. It's a really nice card. Definitely fitting for the boss monster of the deck. Uh, the next most important one for me personally was Leon. Leon is if your opponent responds to one of your Enneacraft effects, you get to flip him face up and then bounce three cards on the field back to hand, and it does not target. So you can, if your opponent like tries to like bounce one of their guys away, to like or like use it as a material or whatever, like for like a quick link summon or whatever, like as like the next chain, you can just be like, cool, that new card you summoned is just going back to your hand anyways, thanks. Or you could even use it to protect your own guys, which is really cool. Uh, this one is it prevents the. I'm pretty sure this one prevents the targeting, and then this is the one that prevents destruction for your Enneacraft cards, which is really cool. Uh, and then this is the only one that had a flip effect, the putting things face down. These ones have continuous abilities, which are if your opponent adds to hand, burn them for 900. If your opponent sends a monster to graveyard, burn them for 900, and just they can't target cards in their field or graveyard, which is really cool. I think the deck's got interesting lines. It makes your opponent really have to think to work around to get them. But also all Enneacrafts, and including the next ones I'll show, have the same last ability, which is you can show one in hand as many times as you want a turn, and then shuffle your hand, set one face down, or any monster face down from your hand, which is really cool. You could play things that are Enneacraft, but I prefer not to right now. But you could literally, and it's not once per turn, so like when we get to the little guys, like this little guy for example, I could show you this 5 times in one turn and just set 5 different things that aren't him, which is really cool. But yeah, that's it for the big boys. The little guys, I also think I have ranked in terms of importance. Let's see here. Yeah, so I got, and I'm gonna apologize because these names are wacky. It's like three Alzonia, three copies of Tomarai, three copies of Orgia, and three copies of it's Oaknira. The, that's the only unfortunate part about these cards. They have some wacky names, and I'm just sitting there like I can't pronounce a single one of these, man. Um, so really funny story before I continue. When I was testing this deck, I always felt like I was missing out on Orgia. Like I was like, man, I'm just never seeing him for some reason. And when I was filling out the deck list to play this regional, I saw that I had two of him and four of him. I don't know how that happened. And I was like, oh shoot! So I had to hunt down the last copy of them. It was pretty fun. They look like exactly the same to me because they're all little like pyramid cubes, you know. So uh, these have the important pendulum scale effect, and obviously you can use. They have decent monster effects too, but the important thing is in the scale you can pay 900 life points to show your opponent three Enneacraft cards, and one is randomly selected to go to your hand. So typically you're revealing three of the same card and then adding whatever card you want from your deck to your hand, which is really nice. This one, for its flip effect and activation condition, this was if your opponent adds a card to hand, you get to you don't none of these negate. They just if your opponent like triggers the effect, you do a search for an Enneacraft card, and then you get to do its flip effect, which this one will banish a random card in your opponent's hand face up, which is really cool. The at the regional I was at, I spent like I think it was like 4 or 5 games. If I had him face down, they would add a card to their hand and I would banish it, and then they'd have to look at me and be like, I don't really have a different play if you get rid of that. It was really funny. This one I believe is the special summon one. Yeah, if your opponent special summons one, you get to, or activates an effect to special summon one, you get to chain this to flip up to search for an Enneacraft card, and then you get to, on a new chain, negate the effects of a monster they control. Uh, this came up a lot. Like, it was really good because a lot of times they'd activate something special from deck, and they'd be turn player, so they'd be like, well, I get to do chain one and activate the new summon monster's effect. And I'd be like, that's cool. I'm chain two. Your monster's effect is negated, and it kind of it puts it made it very awkward for a lot of my opponents. This one I believe is just I know it destroys a monster, but it is if your opponent activates a monster effect in hand, which doesn't come up that often, which is really unfortunate. But when it does, the effect that it can just pop a monster on field when it's flipped face up is really cool. And this one's if your opponent like messes with something in their graveyard and you get to shuffle three back. Uh, it's definitely the least important of them. And if you're looking to like scale them, this is probably the one you always keep in scale because it's not that great. This works really good against like Gem Knights and stuff, but it's not particularly that good against anything else. But that is it for the Enneacraft monsters, and I want to go into the spell cards before I go into the little bit of non-engine I played. I played three of the best card ever, which is Enneacraft Reverse, which is you can shuffle. You want to find this card every game. Like this, you have to resolve one of these on your first turn to get engrave. But you shuffle any number of Enneacraft cards from your hand, your extra deck, your field to deck, and you draw the same amount. Which is really cool because I like to take the ones. Let's see here. I like to take like the little guys that have really good effects, scale them first, use the search for the for an Enneacraft card, and then shuffle them back in so I can draw them and then use them as interaction for my opponent's turn. That is the really good card, or really good part about this card. And then it has a graveyard effect, which is if your opponent normal or special summons, you either get to special summon an Enneacraft from your hand in face down defense, which does come up. The other one I don't think came up. Oh no, it did came up. Was you get to like swap positions of a Enneacraft. So if it's face down, you get to flip it face up, which is cool because sometimes you don't necessarily want to use the you don't have time to wait for the effect if that makes sense. For your opponent to be like, oh hey, I'm going to cause, one of my opponents wanted to like go to battle, so he'd special summon his last monster, and I'd be like, okay, chain this engrave, flip this face up. All your monsters are face down, and they were not a fan of it, as to be expected. But It's a really good effect. And a way to make sure that you get them back to your hand is, of course, the field spell. It is also your win condition. So I mentioned the counters earlier for the Enneacrafts. Uh, this gives you something to do with them, which is you get to during both end phases, you have to remove as many counters that you have on there, and you burn your opponent for 900 each. So it's a little bit of a burn deck, but there is like really cool and interesting like tempo plays considering you're normally in defense position, so you're not really going out to attack unless your opponent has an empty board, right? But its other ability that's really cool is once per turn from your like field, your scales and your monster zones, you can just bounce as many Enneacrafts as you want back to hand, which is really cool because then you can, if you do attack, you can bounce them back to your hand, reset them, and stuff like that. And then the other thing is when your Enneacraft is flipped face up, you can choose to uh, put it back to hand, which goes along with this, so you can special it from hand. None of the Enneacraft's monster effects are once per turn, so you can use the negate as many times as you want. You can use the one where if you respond to a Enneacraft as many times as you want. It's just a really good, cool, and interesting combination of cards. And then the last one is the Enneacraft release. I'd like you a little more on there. There we go. This card is okay. It lets you play a Enneacraft from deck to scale, and then except for the turn, except it was sent to the graveyard, you can banish it from graveyard to add one from your face-up extra deck to your hand. Um, it does come up. The only unfortunate part about this card is it's a once per turn for both. So if you open two, it feels kind of crummy, but like you got to make do with what you can. Once the I think it's Blazing Dominion or whatever. Once that set comes out, we get more changes for this deck that make it a lot better, where you don't have to rely on that as much. Onto the non-engine I played. I played 3 copies of Nibiru. I'm gonna be honest. I didn't know what to play for non-engine, but I was like, well, I don't have enough cards to play this pure because I'm already playing everything at 3 copies. So I had to guess with this one. It did okay when it could, but it obviously could have been better. 3 copies of Sol and Luna. This card is great for this deck because once again, you can flip up your guys face down, and you can stop your opponent from having Synchro, XYZ, or Link material by flipping their stuff face down, which was really nice. It came up. It also helped me dodge a couple cards too. Uh, but it is a once per turn, so I'm debating if I cut it down to 2 copies. I haven't quite decided. We play the one called by a grave just because I don't like dealing with specifically Droll and Lockbird because it does kill this deck. But that is pretty much it. Like Ash can hurt this deck sometimes, but Droll and Lockbird really messes with this deck. And the last card is the 41st card. I'm playing one evenly matched. My buddy gave this to me. Shout out to him. Uh, Realistically, you don't need this card in your deck, but it's my 41st card and it's totally fine. It actually did come up in a game and it really messed up my opponents because I opened this like almost every game. But that is it for this deck profile. I didn't bring a sideboard because I was just like, I don't know what to side in this format or anything, or if I wanted to side. And then I didn't bring a extra deck because this deck doesn't really need an extra deck unless you play like the Mega Zaborg and you play the branded quick play spell, which I just didn't like. I had access to the branded quick play spell, but I didn't have access to the rest of it. So I was like, I'm not really gonna worry about it. I think it's fine where it's at. But yeah, let me know if you like this or not. Yu-Gi-Oh won't be like super there on my channel because it's not often I build a Yu-Gi-Oh deck, but every once in a while I like to. Uh, when it's cheap and affordable, I should say. But yeah, that is it for this one, and I hope to see you guys back. I think tomorrow. It's either tomorrow or Wednesday. I'm gonna have something for you, but stick around. I'll see you later. Peace.